Good evening. We are going to be learning tonight Maseches Pesachim Daf Yud Zayin. Just at the outset, to remind all of you, thank God we're now with relative ease. It doesn't take so much effort to set up. We now have our shir both on Podbean and on Apple Podcast. I can put it on other platforms. It's all very easy and included. It's not difficult. If people have preferences for Google, can do that too. Just let me know. If your notifications are set, then it will hit your phones soon after shir and after the shir is uploaded. We're in the midst of what is known to be one of the more difficult sugyas in Maseches Pesachim, which is loosely referred to as the sugya of Chanina Skan Kohanim. And today we're going to be learning something that, when I was preparing, reminded me of the three-man weave in high school. When we used to practice basketball, so they would teach you got one guy running, he has to cross the middle. So you're interacting with another player. The third guy's kind of standing at the outset, but he's brought back in a little later. We'll see today, as was in the handout, and I'll do a screen share when the time comes. We'll see today that there are three different machlokos amoraim, and they interconnect with each other in subtle ways. So hopefully over the course of the day today, the evening, we'll be able to understand those with clarity. We're starting on the top of Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. We're 3 lines down, Gufa. At the end of the day yesterday, we had quoted a pasuk from from Chagai, excuse me, and the pasuk is actually on the very bottom of Tes Zayin Amud Beis. And Chagai was speaking to the Kohanim of the time. He asked them a shaila, and they answered the shaila by saying that there's no tuma. And there was a machlokes about whether or not the Kohanim were correct. Let's start from there. Gufa, 3 lines from the top. Rav Amar Ishtabesh Kahanim. The Kohanim gave the incorrect answer to Chagai. Ushmuel Amar Lo Ishtabesh Kahanim. And Shmuel says, no, they did not make a mistake. What is going on here? So Rav Amar Ishtabesh Kahane, Rav says they made an error because what was the shaila that was being asked? Revi'i Bakodesh Ba'aminaihu. They were asking about what we would refer to as a Revi'i Latuma. Now we know that a Revi'i Latuma applies only to one scenario, and that is Kudshim. The more Kedusha something has, the more opportunity for Tuma something has. This idea is true in Hashkafa as well. So the more Kedusha that something has, the greater its capacity is for Tuma. So therefore, by me and you, Sheni Latuma is the maximum. There is no Shlishi Latuma by Chulin. However, because the Kohanim and Truma have a greater level of Kedusha, therefore there's a Shlishi Latuma. And because Kadshim is even more Kadosh even than Truma, so it has a Revi'i Latruma. So what Chagai was asking the Kohanim was as follows. Hey, is there a Revi'i Latuma by Kadshim? And they said no. And they're wrong, because there is a Revi'i Latuma by Kadshim. That's what Rav says here. Let's go back in the Gemara. We're 5 lines down. Rav Amar Ishtabesh Kane, the Kohanim gave the wrong answer to Chagai. What was the question? Revi'i Bakodesh Ba'aminaihu. Chagai was asking them, hey, do you know the din of Revi'i Bakodesh as it relates to Kadshim? And Ve'amru Le, the Kohanim said back to him, Tahor. And they're wrong. So that's why Rav says that the Kohanim made an error. Now, Ushmuel Amar Lo Ishtabesh Kane. How does Shmuel get away with saying that there is no error? There is absolutely a din of Revi'i Latuma as it relates to Truma. So then how is it that they didn't make a mistake? That doesn't make any sense, says the Gemara, because Chamishi Bakodesh Ba'aminayu V'amru Le Tahor. Really, Chagai was testing them, and he's like, how about Chamishi Latuma? And there is no Chamishi Latuma. The highest level of Kedusha as it relates to the world of Korbanos is Kadshim. So therefore, only by Kadshim do we have anything that's as far as a Revi'i Latuma, but there's no gradation under that to say that there's a Chamishi Latuma. So that's why he said it wasn't a mistake. They were asking, it was a trick question. They asked, Chagai was asking about the Chamishi Latuma. There is no Chamishi Latuma. Now the Gemara asks the following question on this Machlokes Rav and Shmuel. Rav said Kohanim made a mistake. Shmuel says Kohanim didn't make a mistake. Bishlam ala Rav. I understand Rav's answer more than I understand Shmuel's. Why? Bishlam ala Rav, Hainu dichsiv. This is what the Parsha writes. Arba. There are 4 foods listed in the pasuk. What does it say? Lechem v'unazid v'yayin v'shemen. So the lechem was the rishon latuma. The nazid was the sheni latuma. The yayin was the shlishi latuma. And the shemen was the revi'i latuma. So we have a beautiful proof to support the shita of Rav. Makes perfect sense. Rav's answer makes more sense than Shmuel's. But says the Gemara, Ela l'Shmuel, chamisha min alei. Where do you get your, if what you want to say is that it's mashma in the pasuk like we did by Rav, so then you, Shmuel, you've got some explaining to do. Why would we then say that they didn't make an error. It only was a reveal tuma. That's all that's in the pasuk. And Shmuel says that's not all that's in the pasuk. Go back and look at the bottom of the page, and you'll see that that's not correct. So Shmuel answers, Miksiv vinaga kanfo. Did it touch the corner? It says no. Vinaga bikanfo ksiv, the extra letter bays. V'ma shenaga bikanfo, and we include in the degradation of the tuma, we add in knaf as rishon, and then the other four, bringing the last one to chamisha. So therefore, by adding in the knaf into the layers of the degradation of tuma, so therefore we actually have a chamishi latuma, and therefore both Rav and Shmuel would have an answer to their question. We're about 10 lines down in Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. Let's continue. Tashma. We have another pasuk from Chagai, and this is going to throw a wrench into some of our understanding so far. Tashma vayomer Chagai. Isn't it the case that he said to the Kohanim that if there's a tmei nefesh, if there's a tamei mace that touches any of these things, that it's going to be tamei? And they said yes, there's going to be tuma in such a case if there's tamei mace that touches something. Absolutely. So says the Gemara. Well, remember earlier we said that Shmuel said that the Kohanim didn't make a mistake. Bishlama l'Shmuel. I understand according to Shmuel. Over here, they got the din correct. Is there tumas meis? And they said yes. So if we understand Shmuel that they didn't make a mistake here, hasam nami lo ishtamesh, they shouldn't have made a mistake over there either. They're talmidei chachamim. They know what they're talking about. Ela Rav, but according to Rav, why is it that you're assuming my shnahacha? Why here is it that we assume? Why in the first pasuk on the bottom of Tezayin and Beis, where they made the error according to Rav, why there do you say that they were ishtabesh, that the Kohanim made a mistake? Why in the second pasuk do you assume de lo ishtabesh? Were they talmidei chachamim or were they not? So the Gemara presents two answers to this question. There's a flaw in the question anyways. I mean, not everybody knows everything. So, I mean, with the Kohanim, should really know their avoda backwards and forwards. If anybody has an asek, if anybody has an expertise, if they're called upon, they should be the chacham, they should be the pikeach, they should be able to paskin on their own shilas. Fine. So how does the Gemara answer this? We're 2 lines before the wide lines. Amar Rav Nachman, answer number 1. How does Rav explain the different approaches where by pasuk number 1, the Kohanim seem to have made an error. By pasuk number 2, they did not. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba Baravua, Bekin Hein Betumas Meis. By the second pasuk, the pasuk that's just a few lines above us, that was talking about Tumas Meis, that the Kohanim were Bekin in. However, Ve'ein Bekin Hein Betumas Sheretz. But if you recall from yesterday, the pasuk at the bottom of the previous page, 3 lines from the bottom of Tezayin, referred to this animal as Basar Kodesh, and Rashi highlights that that's actually talking about one of the Shmona Shratzim. But by Shmona Shratzim, says the Gemara, Ve'ein Bekin Hein Betumas Sheretz. So that's one answer, which is pasuk number 2 was talking about Tumas Meis, and therefore everybody knows those halachos, Kohanim, and everybody knows that din. But when it comes to Tumas Sheretz, they were not such bekim, and because they were not such bekim by Tumas Sheretz, so we're good. No problem at all. The Kohanim don't have to know everything, and Rav's shita can still stand. Rav can say that in pasuk number 1 they got it wrong, and in pasuk number 2 they got it right. They're talking about different halachos. Ravina, first of the long lines, almost halfway down. Ravina Amar, no. Ravina gives another nuance of what they didn't know. Ravina Amar, Hasam Revi, Hacha Shlishi. Over there, where they made a mistake, that was referring to a Revi'i Latuma. And a Revi'i Latuma applies in only the rarest of circumstances, because it only applies where there's the greatest of Kedusha, which is Kodshim. Way more common in Truma to see a Shlishi, but a Revi'i is very uncommon. So Ravina says in the first pasuk, where according to Rav, they made a mistake, that was talking about a Revi'i, which was a less well-known fact in halacha. But when it comes to a shlishi, that's the pasuk that we have here on the Amud Aleph that we learned about 10 lines ago. The pasuk that speaks about, what's the pasuk say here? That if a tamei mace touches these things, yitma, would it become tamei? So for that pasuk, that was talking about a shlishi. Very good. Okay, next, Tashma, we're about halfway down. The pasuk continues, another pasuk in Chagai. V'yan Chagai v'yomer kein ha'am hazeh v'chein hagoy hazeh lefanai ne'um Hashem. This nation stands before me, says Hashem. Rashi highlights that we are missing half the pasuk. Let's look at Rashi. The last 3 lines before the Gemara gets wide, we're missing the end of the pasuk. Rashi assumes, and he should be right, that we should know Tanakh by heart, which we don't. We should, but the end of the pasuk is critical because without that, the whole Gemara doesn't flow. Says Rashi, Seife Dekra. What does the end of the pasuk say? V'chein, and similarly, Kol Ma'aseh Yadayim v'asher yakrivu sham tamehu. Everything they did was actually tameh. So now the pasuk says that they did something tameh. Bishlama Rav, I understand according to Rav that it says a pasuk in Chagai that the work that they did was tamei. I understand. I've always thought they made a mistake, says Rav. They made a mistake by the Kohanim on the bottom of Tez Zayin and Beis. Okay, they got the pasuk on Yud Zayin and Aleph correct, but they already made one mistake. So of course their kabbanos are going to be problematic. So that makes perfect sense. Hainu dechsiv tamei. That's why this new pasuk, this third pasuk that's being brought here, refers to them as tamei. Ela l'Shmuel amai tamei. But according to Shmuel, who says that the Kohanim did not make any errors, the Kohanim in the times of Chagai, they knew halacha backwards and forwards. They didn't make any mistakes. And the answers that we provided for the pasuk on the bottom of Tez Zayin and Beis we answered before. How would Shmuel answer? So the first answer he gives is rejected. He says, no. The question, you read it as a sentence of it is tamei, and he thinks it should be read rhetorically. It is tamei. The Gemara says, "Itmuhe kametama." The way you should read it is in wonderment. Absolutely, of course they're not tamei. You think they're tamei? A rhetorical question. So this says the Gemara. Sorry, no can do. V'ha, quote, v'chein kol ma'aseh yodeim ksiv. It says v'chein, and similarly. And take a look at Rashi. Rashi, just on the dialectics, he doesn't like this as a question that's involved in rhetorical questions. It doesn't work. Says Rashi, the second of the wide lines, dibur hamaschil v'chein, lav tmi hamashma. When someone says, and similarly, that language doesn't then lend to you saying a rhetorical question. It's a way that Rashi understands it. Fine. So then if that's the case, how then does Shmuel understand this pasuk? Because this pasuk says that their korbanos are tamei. But if Shmuel says that they never did anything wrong, that the Kohanim never made an error, why is this pasuk saying that their korbanos are tamei? Answers the Gemara. We're 3-4 lines down into the wide lines. Yudzayin and Aleph Amar Zutra v'Itema Rav Ashi. Because in other areas they struggle to keep halacha, therefore it's as if the Torah would say about them, we know that this is true. The Gemara in Maseches Yoma details how the Churban took place by the second Beis HaMikdash. It had to do with Sinas Chinam. They might have known kachim backwards and forwards, like Shmuel said. But if you act like a behema gasa, if you're not acting like a normal person, then yeah, that's a problem. You're a tameh. You're a tameh. Even if not halachically you're a tameh, but something's wrong. So that's what Shmuel says, or Shmuel's answered on behalf of the later Amorim. Shmuel was the 2nd generation. Rav Ashi was the 6th generation. So this is coming in later. And he's answering for them. He's saying, no, come on. What Shmuel meant was that we're talking about Kohanim that may have known the din. They may have known the din, but they weren't acting in the way that they should have been acting, and therefore they were treated as though they were tuma, as though they were tamei. Says the Gemara a little bit more than halfway down Gufa. We learned yesterday about the shita of Yossi ben Yoezer ish Tzreda. I'm going to pull up this sheet now. Feel free to join along here. I might just be able to see it here on my screen. Okay. So we learned that there's a machlokes in how to understand a leniency that we learned yesterday in the name of Yossi ben Yoezer ish Tzreda. So look at machlokes number 2. It says, Eich mevinim, how do we understand Yossi ben Yoezer ish Tzreda when he said that mashkin base mitbachaya dachan, that the liquids of the slaughter room in the mikdash were all tahor? That's a machlokas. Let's see this machlokas here. Says the Gemara, Gufa, Rav Tani mashke base mitbachaya. When Yossi ben Yoezer was being lenient, he was being lenient about the liquids that are found in the slaughter room itself. Those liquids are water and blood, as we will soon see. V'levi tana mashke be midbechaya, with a dalid, not with a tes. Midbechaya, from the mizbeach. Dalid and shin are interchangeable in Aramaic, and therefore what he's referring to is not only is water and blood not tamei, but Levi takes an even more expansive approach. All 4 liquids are tahor: water, blood, oil, and wine. That's what the Bei Midbachaya is all 4. So now here's what the Gemara needs. And for this, we needed the chart because it's a little hard to, it was for me at least. I needed to write it up just to get a tfisa on what was going on here. Says the Gemara as follows. Okay, we got the machlokes that you'll see machlokes number Number 2 is this question about how to understand Yossi ben Yoezer. Do we say it's only 2 liquids? That's 2a, or do we say it's all 4 liquids, which is 2b? So says the Gemara, Levi, according to the opinion of Levi, who says that Yossi ben Yoezer was saying that all 4 liquids were exempt; they could not become tamei. Hanicha isvira Shmuel. I could understand if elsewhere we followed like the Shita of Shmuel de Amar, who says, and this is Machlokas number 3 on the page, Dachan milatame tumas acherem aval tumas atman yesh lahen. I could understand Levi's Shita as long as it's within the Shita of Shmuel, that's Shita 3b, who says that there is no tuma for a liquid to give to something else. A liquid cannot give tuma to something else, but it can become tamei itself. Barrel of wine can become tamei itself, but it can't be metame others. That's the sheet of Shmuel. Mishkachas ladenage kulhu rishon. I could understand the scenario where the pasuk that indicates that we have tuma, as we just saw in the first pasuk that we saw by Chagai, the pasuk there that indicates that by yayin and by shemen that we have tuma. I could understand that if we hold like Shmuel, because Shmuel at least holds that there's some tuma by these liquids. Where? By the barrel itself. It doesn't have the capacity to give tuma. We discussed this at length last night, but in and of itself, the barrel can become tamei. However, Ella, Isavar le Kirav, if Levi to be holds like Rav in 3a, if Levi holds that all 4 liquids are exempt from tuma, and if he holds like Rav, who says that liquids never have tuma, that's a contradiction in terms. It can't be that Levi, who says in 2b, he holds that Yossi ben Yoezer meant to say that all 4 of these liquids were totally exempt from all tuma. It won't work, because then how does the pasuk in Chagai make any sense that says that there is tuma by shemen and by yain? It doesn't work. If Levi were to hold like Rav, that really when it comes to liquids, there's no tuma whatsoever by these liquids, then then hechi mishkachas la. How do we work out the pasuk in Chagai that says we do have tuma by shemen and by yayin? Al korchach, it must therefore be kishmuel sfira lein. That's the arrow that I've drawn there, is that 2b must be also with 3b. The only way Levi can have a shita at all, one that checks off the boxes of all shitas to make sure that it's actually viable, is if he is within the camp of Shmuel in Machlokes 3. Otherwise, it doesn't work, because if he's in the camp of Rav in Machlokes 3, so then the pasuk in Chagai doesn't have a match. Good. Ula Shmuel, and according to Shmuel, who in Machlokes number 1, now we're looking at 1b. According to the first Machlokes that we have on the page about whether or not the Kohanim made a mistake, according to Shmuel, it says that they did not make a mistake. Hanicha, I could understand that. Isavar la kirav the tani mashke beis matzbechaya. I could understand Shmuel in Machlokes number 1 if he held like Rav in Machlokes number 2. Now, listen, Rav is his bar plugta in number 1. Rav is the one he's arguing against in number 1. This is a little, pay attention here. The machlokes between in number 1 is whether or not the Kohanim made a mistake. Rav said yes, Shmuel said no. But the only way Shmuel can say that they didn't make a mistake is if in machlokes 2, within his understanding of Yossi ben Yoezer, that he holds like Rav, that only 2 liquids are exempt from tuma, and that would be dam and mayim. Let's continue in the Gemara and see why that's true. Ula Shmuel, according to Shmuel, who says that the Kohanim didn't make an error by Chagai, Hanicha, I could understand his shita isavar la kirav. That's only true if he holds like Rav in 2a. The tani mashke beis matzbechaya. Aval mashke be madbechaya. If he would have held like the shita that says that all 4 of them are going to be tahor, that's a problem. But Rav would have held mad b'chaya charini name mitamu. Those can become tamei according to Rav, and that works out very nicely, because again, that's the pasuk in Zechariah. Revi'i hu delo avid chamishi. A revi'i can't make a chamishi. With that, everyone will agree. However, hashlishi avid revi'i. But these liquids can make other things tamei, the liquids that it would be the liquids of yayin and shemen, those can make other things tamei. Ella, if Shmuel isavar like Levi, if Shmuel would have held like 2b, if he would have held like Levi, who says that all 4 liquids are completely exempt from tuma, isavar like Levi, the tani mashke be mad b'chaya my ir yiravi. Who cares what degradation, what level of tuma you have? The lo avid chamishi afilu sheni v'shlishi nami lo avid. No matter what, the liquids are never going to have any tuma, because according to Levi, he understood Yossi ben Yoezer in a very expansive way, that none of these 4 liquids can ever become tamei. And therefore, the only way to understand Shmuel in Machlokes, number 1, is if he's within Rav in Machlokes, number 2. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Al Korchach, says the Gemara, Al Korchach, it must be that Shmuel in Machlokes, number 1, holds Al Korchach ke Rav sphere, like he must hold like Rav in Machlokes number 2. Now, going back to Machlokes number 2, we now have a brisa to support each of these opinions. How so? Tanya Kavase de Rav, Tanya Kavase de Levi. We're going to find a brisa that supports Rav, and Rav says only 2 liquids were included in the statement of Yossi ben Yoezer, and that is water and blood. And then we're going to see a proof for Levi that includes all 4 liquids, and these proofs are explicit. They're very clear within the brisas, and each of them really has a tremendous foot to stand on. So Tanya Kavase de Rav, Tanya Kavase de Levi, 7 lines from the bottom. Tanya Kavase de Levi, Levi, who has the more expansive understanding of Yossi ben Yoezer, to say that all 4 liquids, Mayim, Dam, Shemen, and Yain, all 4 of them never become Tamei. What does his brisa say? Hadam, v'hayayin, v'hashemen, v'hamayim. Mashke beimid b'chay shenitmu b'mifnim v'hotziel nachutz tahorin. Even if an act occurred to these liquids that in theory would have made them tamei, they're always going to be tahor. What a perfect raya for Yossi ben Yoezer. That's how Levi understood Yossi ben Yoezer. But he looked at this brisa, he's like, now I understand Yossi ben Yoezer. All 4 liquids are listed here. Even if you do something that in theory should be matame, it'll never become tamei, tahorin. That's if it was tamei b'bifnim. If the act of tuma occurred inside, it would never become tahor, even if you took it out. But the reverse, nitmu b'chutz. What if one of these 4 liquids became tamei outside of this holy place, outside of the azara? V'chnisan bifnim. Then halacha is tmein. That should be pashut. That the only leniency that Yossi ben Yoezer had is beis mitbachaya. That's what he's quoted in the previous blot saying. The only leniency that Yossi, it wasn't across the boards that none of these liquids have any tuma. All he was saying was that in the beis mitbachaya, in this location in the Azara, is that these 4 liquids have no tuma. We'll see soon as halacha l'moshe misinai. But for now, this is a beautiful raya for Yossi ben Yoezer, as Levi understood him. All 4 liquids are listed in the brisa, so we therefore see that Levi's expanded understanding of Yossi ben Yoezer, that all 4 liquids are exempt from tuma in the base Hamikdash, is correct. Says the Gemara, interjecting with a brief back and forth. Says the Gemara, Eini, is this analysis true? Let's see what the question is. Eini, is this true? V'ha'amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, 5 lines from the bottom. Mashke beimid b'chaya lo amru dachan ela b'makoman. The only time we say that these 4 liquids are dachan, are tahor, is b'makoman. It's only true when they are in their place. However, what does this mean? My love, doesn't this mean lemeute nitmeu bifnim vehotzian lechutz? Doesn't this seem to exclude a case where it became seemingly tamei inside and was brought outside? Maybe we should assume that once it leaves the premises, it becomes tamei. Says the Gemara, lo, you misunderstood. Lemeute, it's excluding the case where the tuma happened outside and it was brought inside. Nitmeu bachutz v'chnisan bifnim. It's talking about a case where the tuma happened outside and it was brought back inside. Seemingly, it should only be when it's b'mekoman. It shouldn't be anywhere else. Namely, even if you take it out of the mikdash to the outside, maybe we should still say it's tamei. Says the Gemara, hachi kamar, 2 lines from the bottom. Lo amru dachan ela shenitmeu b'mekoman. When do we say that these 4 liquids are tahor? That's when a maisa tuma to these 4 liquids took place within the Beis Hamikdash. Then we say, like Rabbi Yossi ben Yoezer ish tzreida, that there is no tuma for any of these 4 ochlen. What's the raya for Rav? Rav says that Yossi ben Yoezer's leniency only applies to 2 liquids of mayim and of dam. Tanya Kavase the Rav, he has a brisa too, black on white. Each of them have such beautiful Mari Makomos to stand on. Their shitas are so clear from the Tanaim. What does it say for Rab, last line? Hadam vehamayim, so clear. Hadam vehamayim, water and blood. Mashke beis mid bechaya. This is the language that we had in our Gemara yesterday by Yosi ben Yoezer ish tzreda. Shenitmu, that became tame, quote unquote, namely an act that would have made anything else tame was done to them. However, bein bekalim, bein bekarka tahorin. Whether or not that act happened, bein bekalim, bein bekarka, if it happened while it was in a kli or on the ground, it would be tahor because Yosi ben Yoezer said that it's mutter in the Beis Hamikdash. Let's continue this brisa that supports Rav as we turn to the top of Yud Zayin Amud Beis. The Gemara continues in the brisa. Reb Shimon Omer, Reb Shimon argues with the Tanakama, and he makes a distinction between kalim and karka. The Tanakama said, whether it's kalim or karka, it doesn't make a difference. You're going to remain tahor. Reb Shimon says, hold on, not so fast. The kalim tmein. If the liquid, one of these two liquids, maim and dam, were in a kli, and then it got touched by something tamei, it would become tamei taka. Bikarka, had one of these two liquids been touched on the ground, then still tahorin, we would expand Rav Yosi ben Yoezer even to that. Okay, says the Gemara as follows. Amar Rav Papa. Rav Papa says, now we're out of the brisa because Rav Papa's the Namora. This was Tanya Kabase Drab. Now we're talking Rav Papa. Now there's no switch. You just have to pay attention to the names. Rav Papa was an Namora. Amar Rav Papa, Afilu leman de Amar Tumas Mashkin de Oraisa. Even according to the opinion that holds that liquids can become Tamei Mida Oraisa, still Mashke Beis Mitbachaya, the din that Yosi ben Yoezer said that the liquids in the Beis Hamikdash do not become tahor, it's even according to the shita that says that the tomb of a liquid is deoraisa, afal pikein. It doesn't make a difference, but if they're in the Beis Hamikdash, it doesn't become tameh. Why? Says the Gemara, key words, hilchasa gemirila. Hilchasa gemirila. This is code word for halacha l'moshe misinai according to most Rishonim. Take a look at Rashi here on the side. Rashi is about halfway down the page. Dibur hamaschil hilchasa gemirila misinai delo mitma'u. No matter what you do to these liquids, you could literally stick a mace in these liquids, it won't make a difference. Halacha l'moshe misinai, these liquids can't become tameh, even if you hold that liquids could contract tuma midoraisa. Asks the Gemara against Rav Papa, are you sure that you're right, Rav Papa? The Gemara is going to ask two questions. Number one, 4 lines down, Yud Zayin Amud Beis. Amar le Rav Huna b'rei Rav Nasan the Rav Papa. Hold on one second. De Elaha de Amar Rebbe Lazar ein tuma lamashkin kol ikar. Yesterday, in the very brisa in which we saw the shita of Yosi ben Yoezer, what did we see? That brisa started out with this shita. It said, Rebbe Lazar said, ein tuma lamashkin kol ikar. Liquids don't have tuma at all. Teda, the word Teda means I can prove it to you. You should know. Teda, you should know. What's my Mari Makom, says Rabbi Lazar? My Mari Makom is Shaharei Heid Yosef ben Yoezer ish tzreda, because Yosef ben Yoezer said, Al mashke beis mitbechaya, on the liquids that are in the Beis Hamikdash, namely with the language of mitbechaya, that's the shita of Rav, which is water and blood, dachan, they're tahor. So says the Gemara, Rav Papa, you said it's a halacha l'moshe misinai? V'i hilchasa gemirila, if it's a halacha l'moshe misinai, how did Rebbe Lazar extract his shita from halacha l'moshe misinai? By a halacha l'moshe misinai, that is where we apply the catchphrase of ein lecha bo el chidusho. You can't take a halacha l'moshe misinai and extrapolate from it to anything. It is its own world of Torah. You're absolutely not allowed to extract any chidushim from the world of a halacha l'moshe misinai to any other thing in the world. Why? Because it's halacha l'moshe misinai. It's such a unique din. It's not svaradik. It's not rational. It's just what HaKadosh Baruch Hu said. It's a gzera min hashamayim. Doesn't have to make sense. Doesn't need a pasuk even. Halacha l'moshe misinai. So, Rav Papa, if you're saying it's halacha l'moshe misinai, then how did Rebbe Lazar infer anything from Yosi ben Yoezer ish tzreda if he was saying it's halacha l'moshe misinai? Rav Papa, how can you be right that this is a halacha l'moshe misinai? Question number one. The hilchas agmirila mi gamrinan mina. Is it even possible to extrapolate anything? Question number two. Amar le Ravina le Rav Ashi. Ravina says to Rav Ashi, the Harib Shimon de Amar Tumas Mashkin de Oraisa. Yesterday we saw the din that Reb Shimon held that Tumas Mashkin are de Oraisa, that liquids become tameh even on a Torah level. Titania, as a Brisa wrote, we saw this yesterday. Rabbi Yossi v'Reb Shimon omrim lekelim tahorin laochlin tmein. Rabbi Yossi and Reb Shimon were of the opinion that if this liquid was in a kli, it would be tahor, but ochlin can become tamei, a liquid can become tamei midoraisa. V'hacha, here, what do we see? V'hacha, what do we see in this Brisa here? Ka'amar Rabban Shimon, Reb Shimon disagrees here, and what does he say? Reb Shimon says on the very top line here, v'hacha ka'amar Rabban Shimon b'kelim tmein b'karka tahorin. But I don't understand. If Reb Shimon is of the opinion that he makes a distinction between kelim, where he says that the liquid would be tamei, and karka, where he says that the liquid would be tahor, where in the world does he get permission to do that from, Rav Papa? If you're saying that this is a halacha l'Moshe Sinai, the ihilchasahi, if it's halacha l'Moshe Sinai, Rav Papa, mali kelim, mali bekarka, you don't get to choose how to apply a halacha l'Moshe Sinai. The halacha l'Moshe Sinai is what it is. And if the halacha l'Moshe Sinai is that liquids in the mikdash don't become tamei, then liquids in the mikdash don't become tamei. Not in a kli, not in the karka. And who's Rav Shimon to make a distinction on halacha l'Moshe Sinai? Totally unreasonable, Rav Papa. Totally unreasonable. You can't be right that there's a halacha l'Moshe Sinai here. Can't be, because otherwise you have two bomb kashas against you. How does the Gemara answer the question? One word, kasha. We don't know the answer to this question. The Meforshim elsewhere, not here, the Rishonim do point out that when you see the answer of kasha versus the answer of teku, those are very different answers. Teku is we mamish have to wait. Kasha is that we can't get our heads around this. We don't know the answer. The Rishonim are allowed to suggest answers. So you got to get into it. But the Gemara is not rejecting Rav Papa here. It's raising a red flag. Two very powerful questions about whether or not we would say that the din of a liquid becoming tamei in the mikdash, is that a halacha l'Moshe Sinai, yes or no? So that's subject to two very, very high level questions the Gemara is asking against Rav Papa. Omar Rav Papa, yet another comment of Rav Papa, less complex than the previous. Omar Rav Papa, ha de amris bekarka tahorin lo shanu elamayim. When we said that liquid that's on the ground remains tahor, lo shanu, that's only true with water. Aval dam lo, but if it was blood, then it could be subject to tuma. Umayim nami, water also that fell on the ground, lo amran, we also wouldn't say that it was kosher, ela dahavi revius. It needs a minimum of a revius. Why? What could you possibly do with a revius of wine? This was a bit of a chiddush to me, said because I never learned this. Says the Gemara, why? What's the revius? Because in a revius of wine, you could be tovel a needle, a kli. What about 40 sa? So the din of 40 sa for a mikvah is for human beings. But when you're dealing with kelim, all you need is a revius. You have a revius of wine. I never really thought about it. I don't know how much a sa is in water volume. Is the kelim mikvah 40 sa? I have no idea. But we don't need 40 sa for a kelim mikvah. We only need 40 sa for people. But for a kelim mikvah, it could even be as small as a revius. So if it's at least a revius, then we would have tuma. Then we would have the tahara for water. Less than that would cause for tuma. Aval lo have revius tmein. Good. Done with this more complicated sugya. Well, somewhat done. Now we're amen. Very hard sugya. When I was preparing for this, I saw somewhere it was written that this is one of the more difficult sugyas in Pesachim. It is quite challenging to hold all the pieces together, and it is great that we trucked through together. It is a very, very hard sugya. We're almost halfway down Yud Zayin and Aleph. We're going to be going until about 6 lines from the bottom. Omar Mar, yesterday, 2 days ago, we saw a Bryce on Tes Zayin and Aleph that quoted the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda. And Rabbi Yehuda, in regards to the discussion of Tumah with liquids, said the following phrase, Rabbi Yehuda Omer lakol tameh. And it left an implication. And here we are back in our Gemara, Yud Zayin Amud Beis, Amar Mar, Rabbi Yehuda Omer lakol tameh. Everything is tameh when it comes to liquids. So what does that mean? Says the Gemara, L'meimra, what is implied from the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda? We're going to question this implication. So let's focus here. L'meimra, what is implied from Yehuda? The Sava Rabbi Yehuda, Tumas mashkin letame, take out the word tumas, Tumas mashkin letame kelim de oraisa, that we can make everything tame, even kelim. It's an inference because he said lakol. not just the liquids itself, but even that which holds the liquid. That's the diuk in Rabbi Yehuda. You said everything can become tameh when it comes to liquid. So even the kli that holds it can become tameh. But is that true? It's not. Kol hakelim. When you have a kli sheyesh lahen achorim v'toch, when there is an outside and an inside, namely it's reversible in essence. The inside and outside can both be used. So then kigon, for example, akarim v'aksasos v'asakin v'amartzupin. These are all type of bags, all types of pillowcases, whatever they are, that can be inverted. They can be put inside out or right side in. They can be used either way. All of them, they have the following distinction. What's the distinction? Nitma tocho, nitma gabo. If the inside of the bag becomes tameh, then automatically the outside of the bag becomes tameh. However, nitma gabo, lo nitma tocha. But if the outside becomes tameh, then the inside does not become tameh. And says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yehuda b'med dvar mamurim. Rabbi Yehuda says, when is this true? Shenitmeu machmas mashkin. This is true when the tuma happened because of a liquid. However, aval nitmu machmas sheretz. If what touched the bag was an av hatuma of a sheretz, then no matter what, nitma tocho nitma gabo, if the inside was tameh, of course the outside will be, as it was even when it was even only mashkin and not a sheretz. Nitma gabo, nitma tocho, and even if only the outside was touched, still the whole thing would be. Now ask the Gemara against our diuk. We had a diuk in Rabbi Yehuda that when he said la kol tameh, it implied that even a kli could be tameh. V'isal kadaitoch tumas mashkin letame kevim deoraisa. If we assume, like we inferred about Rabbi Yehuda, that everything in regards to liquid becomes tameh, even the kli itself, mali nitma machmas mashkin, mali nitma machmas sheretz. Where do you get away making the distinction of the inside of the bag became tameh versus the outside of the bag? The inside of the bag became tameh, therefore the outside's tameh, versus getting the outside tameh and therefore the inside is not tameh. Where do you get to make this distinction from? If you're saying, Rabbi Yehuda, that it's a din deoraisa, you got to bring a mari makom to say your distinction. You can't just make up a shita. We need to understand why you're distinguishing between the inside getting tameh and therefore the outside is tameh, or the outside being the location of the contraction of tum and therefore the inside is not tameh. Where did you get that from? So answers the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, not to be confused, this Rabbi Yehuda is an Amora because it's Amar Shmuel. This is the Amora Rabbi Yehuda, who is a Talmud of Shmuel and Rab. And what does he say? Chazar bo Rabbi Yehuda. Yes, it's what he meant in the brisa that was quoted on Tezayin, Amud Aleph at the top. That is what was quoted and what he meant. But since then, he changed his mind. He doesn't agree with that anymore because of this question. When we have a din d'oraisa, you can't just make distinctions as you see fit. And therefore, the distinction that he made, that if the tumah is contracted on the outside of the bag, it doesn't go inwards. No, you're right. You're right. It can't be that this is the case. So then says the Gemara, you can't answer that. Ihachi. If what you're telling me is that the distinction, sorry, hold on one second. I skipped a line here. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Chazar bo Rabbi Yehuda. He changed his mind. Ravina gives another answer. Ravina Amar leolam, really lo hadar. Really, Rabbi Yehuda didn't go back on his answer. What happened? One of them was where tuma came about with your hands, mamish biyadayim, your hands. Machmas sheretz. And the other case is where it was machmas sheretz. So where it was machmas sheretz, no matter where the sheretz would touch the reversible bag, it would make the whole thing inside and outside tummy. But if it was only biyadayim, then if you touch the outside, then only the outside tummy. So it says the Gemara, if this is the distinction which determines when the inside of the bag will be tummy, as to whether or not it was tummy biyadayim versus being tummy with a sheretz, then say that. So then you just say it. Ihachi, 10 lines from the bottom. Adatani b'medvarim amurim. When the Gemara says, when do we say that the outside of the bag won't make the inside of the bag tameh? And you said there shenitmu machmas mashkin. Don't say that. Say something else. Lif log v'lisni b'dida. Say the distinction that you need to say, which is what you just told me. When the tumah only comes about through your hands, then if you touch the outside, the inside won't become tameh. But tocho nitma gavo. But if it touched the inside, but says the Gemara, abal b'mashkin abayin machmas sheretz nitma tocho nitma gavo. Nitmagavo, nitmatocha, ela machvarta kiddushanin and meikara, chazar bo Rabbi Huda. It can't be the answer of Ravina. Ravina wanted to say that there was another distinction to be made. It was a distinction of how the tumah was contracted. Was it biyadayim or was it b'sheretz? It says the Gemara, no, you can't say that. Because if that's what would have been said, if that was the real answer, then you really needed to say it explicitly. We already said, Bamed Dvarim Amurim, say your answer. So therefore, the Rabbi Huda that we saw in the Brisa on Tez Zayin Amud Aleph retracted his shita, and he does not assume that kalim can be tamei mida oraisa. We'll stop right here. We'll be picking up 6 lines from the bottom for Daf Yud Ches tomorrow night. Wishing you all a beautiful night.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is this could be